All right, guys. Well, welcome to this CUPA conference. Hope everyone's enjoying. And what I'm going to be talking about today is how to conduct a CalARP inspection. I know, let me see, who's here as regulators? How many of you folks? Okay, quite a few. Don't be asking questions. What about consultants? One, two, a few. That's good. Businesses, industries? Okay, so you folks will be asking questions because that's what the regulators are here for, to see who's here, who's not. Anyway, thank you, Bronia, for introducing me. What I'm here today and what I'm doing today is all because of Bronia. She hired me when I was a health inspector, and I had no idea what I was getting into, but this is a great journey. For the last 10 years or 9 years that I've been a hazmat senior, it's perfect. Also, please give a round of applause to Bronia. She's been my manager and accounting for 16 years, and in 2 weeks she'll be retiring. She's been a pioneer in CalARP, and she started the CalARP program in Stanislaus County, and she was the inspector and now the manager, and it's hard to fill in her shoes. And the work that she's done, it's tremendous. So I'm going to do my best to follow her journey and make her proud, even though she's going to be retiring. So anyway, with that, my co-presenter is unfortunately not going to be here today. He had some issues, and he called me, and he apologized. So that's how it's going to be. So you're stuck with me. What I say, it goes. Okay? Any questions, feel free to ask. There's a mic right here. You can come up and ask questions. I prefer not, but I'm willing to. And as a safety guard, I have the CalARP Title 19 regulations with me, because that's my companion, my sidekick. Anytime that I go to a CalARP inspection, I take that with me. And some of the industry folks that I know here, they know that. It's very helpful. So all you regulators who are here, I hope that's one point that you want to take is take the CalARP Title 19 regulations with you. So with that, let me go ahead and start. The CalARP is, do you know what CalARP stands for? We're going to be throwing a lot of acronyms out there, and I've got great stories about acronyms. I'm not going to share that with you, but those were my days when I was a health inspector. Oh, well, I'll just share it. So I went to a health inspection for a health restaurant, and I used the word FBI. I'm here to do an FBI inspection. And everyone freaked out. But does anyone know what FBI stands for? Foodborne illness. So we are so in tune with acronyms, we kind of forget what that means to other people. So CalARP, California Accidental Release Program or Prevention Program, that's what in California governs or regulates the ammonia refrigeration and other acute chemicals that are in Table 1 and Table 2 and Table 3 of the Title 19 regulations. The Table 1 starts on page 96 of Title 19, and it follows all the way to about page 100. So Table 3 is all the state-regulated chemicals. And Table 2 are all the flammables. There's state and federal regulated. And on Table 1 are all the federal listed chemicals. So if you are above the threshold of any of those chemicals listed on Table 1, Table 2, and Table 3, you fall in the CalARP program. And if you are on Table 1, then you fall under the RMP program of EPA, which is the Risk Management Plan. And for example, if you are over 10,000 pounds of anhydrous ammonia, you fall under the PSM program for CalOSHA 2. PSM stands for Process Safety Management. So that's kind of like the core 3 programs for CalARP, RMP, and PSM. I am more in tune with ammonia refrigeration because in my county, I have about 59 facilities, and of those 59 facilities, 55 of those are ammonia refrigeration. I have one facility that's propane. They have about 10 or 12, 15,000 gallon tank farm for propane, and it's for wholesale, not for retail. And a couple of those are fertilizer facilities. So that's it. So I have quite a few extensive knowledge on ammonia refrigeration. I'm not an engineer, as you know, my degree is in biology, concentration, micro. I was a lab rat, and finally I escaped from the lab and went into a health inspector. Then they deported me from EH to a hazmat. So here I am today, guys. So let me talk about PSM, RMP, and CalARP components. These are the components that I think are kind of like the core components in the CalARP program. Registration, management program, program essentials, hazard assessment, documentation, okay? Registration applies to the risk management plan from EPA and CalARP. You don't need a registration if you are under the PSM program for CalOSHA. Management program, again, it only applies to EPA and CalARP. Program essentials. So if you're a program 1, program 2, or program 3, or program 4, unfortunately in Stanislaus County, in my county, we don't have any refineries. So I don't know much about program 4. LA County, LA City, Contra Costa County, those guys are experts, pioneers in program 4. They have refineries. I know there are a couple other classes going in the CUPA conference that is about the same thing on how to conduct a CalARP inspection. So I hope they can shed more light on refineries. So program 2 in the CalARP program starts at regulation 2755, and there's 7 essential programs, and we'll discuss that later on. And in program 3, there are 12 program essentials, prevention programs. Documentation is very important. If you say you did it, you gotta prove it that you did it. If you have no documentation, you didn't do it. That's the bottom line. So I have about 45 slides that I have to go through, and I'll make sure you guys get out of here on time, like I said. So here's the difference between program 2 and program 3, okay? Program 2, like I said, has 7 essential prevention programs. Those are safety information, operating procedures, training, maintenance, incident investigation, hazard review, and compliance audit. Program 3 is 12. There's 5 additional programs that's additional to program 3. And those are employee participation, contractor safety, hard work permit, management of change, and pre-startup safety review. And those are highlighted in red. So they're pretty much the same thing, but under program 3, it's more difficult. They have more requirements. And because of program 3, you may fall under the OSHA's PSM program and also the RMP program from EPA. CalARP program was based out of the RMP program. So if you read the Part 68 of the RMP, the language and the Title 19 language, they are pretty much the same thing. They just kind of took the language out of the RMP risk management plan or program from EPA and made it into a CalARP program for state level. Any questions so far? No? Okay. So let me just kind of give you an overlap of how program 3 interfaces with all different state and federal agencies. So Part 68, which follows the EPA regulations. OSHA, the 29 CFR, has 1910 regulations. CalARP, Title 19, Chapter 4.5, and the regs goes from 2735 to 2780. Those are the regulations. And then the CalOSHA PSM is 5189. Now, as you can see, that the 5189 has two prevention programs that is not in the CalARP program. And that is the compliance audit. And then the next one is the offsite consequences analysis. So OSHA cares about employees. They care about employee safety. Risk management plan, EPA cares about the environment. So that's why in the 5189, you will not see anything written in regulations for offsite consequences analysis, which means the worst case scenario, the alternate case scenario, those are not in the 5189 regs. Any questions so far? Am I confusing you guys? That's the beauty about regulations. 3 different regulations, you gotta know all of them, and it's hard when you go to the facility and you have to explain to them that, oh, you fall under the PSM program. At the same time, you fall under the Part 68 of the EPA regulations and also the Title 19 CalARP regulations. So it kind of makes the facilities a little bit more at a high alert stage. What has worked for me is I tend to not to use the word violation or deficiencies. I kind of use the word findings. So you have these findings, and it kind of gives a positive feedback from the facilities. They are not too of a red alert or a high stage on a defensive mode. That, oh, I'm gonna get all these violations, I'm gonna be cited, and this guy is here, he's gonna take us to the court if there's any Class 1 violation. So what I've done is to use the word findings. And I kind of use what the county's mission statement is to help our businesses and have a balance between science and regulation. Help our community with the balance of science and regulation. And that's what I do. And our Board of Supervisors want to make sure that we provide an effective delivery of public service and create an effective partnership. So those are the things that I keep in mind when I'm doing my inspections and my audits, and I always get good feedback, a good cooperation. So if you want to start a business, come to Stanislaus County. It's going to be good. Not saying that other regulators and other counties are not good. They're great. I've learned a lot from other counties too. So, okay, so any questions so far? So far, so good? Okay, so these are some of the common CalARP components that I think are part of the CalARP plan that the business submits. And I'm not gonna go into a whole lot of great detail of the plan review, the process of reviewing the plan, the public review, completeness review. If I talk all of those things, it's gonna be hours. I need a whole day to talk about that because it's so complex. So what my job is, I'm gonna do my best in an hour and 45 minutes or hour and a half, try to run down the components of CalARP, what each components means, and then kind of give you a breakdown of the prevention programs for Program 2 and Program 3, and what I look for when I'm going over an inspection with the facility. I'm going to talk a little about the deficiencies that I find, and what are the classifications of deficiencies, and in the end, talk about some enforcement. So that's going to be the basis of my talk today. So process applicability, 2735.4, Title 19 regs. If you're a Program 1, Program 2, or Program 3, and refineries Program 4. So if any of those that applies to you, that's what it talks about in process applicability. So for example, and apologize if I'm not stating other acute or extremely hazardous chemicals in Table 1 or Table 3, or because I'm so in tune with anhydrous ammonia, so that's what I'm going to be referring a lot. But if you have any other questions, we can have a sidebar at the end of the session, and we can talk about that. But for program 2, if you're over 500 pounds, you are in the CalARP program, state regulated. If you are over 10,000 pounds of anhydrous ammonia, then you automatically go into the RMP program for EPA and the PSM program from CalOSHA. Okay? Management system, you need to have a management system. What management system tells us is who is responsible. How is this program going to be managed? Who is the person overall responsibility? Who controls the CalARP program, the RMP, PSM program at a facility on a day-to-day basis? Who's managing it? Who's responsible for it? If anything happens, who's calling the agencies? Who's calling the media? It's all in that management system. Registration information. Program 2, you will be state regulated. The local CUPA needs a registration. Now, some CUPAs need to have a permit. Some CUPAs don't require a permit. It depends on the CUPA and the ordinance and the county regulations. But overall, you need to submit to the CUPA the name of the facility, how much tonnage or pound or chemicals you have on hand that puts you in the program 2. Other information about the facility, the address, where it's located, and it also talks about who's going to be responsible for the RMP program or CalARP program and who was responsible to put together the program. So those are most of the information in the program 2 requirement. Program 3 registration has a whole lot of information. It requires dates, expected date of completion for PHA, compliance audit, annual training. It also talks about the offsite consequences analysis. It also talks about how many process you have. But you have to, program 3, you have to register through EPA. And you have to go to that website, CalEPA's website, enter your information through CDAX, and enter all your information. So it's about 12 to 13 pages of information, and it's renewed every 5 years when your 5-year renewal is due, okay? The other component is executive summary. All programs needs a executive summary at all program levels. Executive summary has 6 components, and we'll talk about that in a couple of slides coming up. And it gives a brief description about your facility, prevention programs, emergency response program, plant safety, whatever you have, it goes in the executive summary. And then a qualified person certification. That's one of the most forgotten findings that I find in my inspections. People who sign may not be knowledgeable enough to carry out the RMP or PSM or CalARP program. I was doing an inspection not too long ago, and the person who signed this certification had no knowledge of what was going on. He didn't know what were the prevention programs. He wasn't sure that if anything goes wrong, he's the one responsible for it. So what the consultant did was they prepared the RMP program, and the plant manager goes, okay, here, do you want to sign this? And the person goes, yeah, sure, why not? You know, I sign other work orders, so why not I sign this document? So when I was conducting my inspection, I asked him, so do you understand about compliance audit? Yep, this is what we did. We sat down with the consultant, and this is what we did. I said, okay, how long do you have to complete all of your findings and recommendations from the compliance audit? He goes, I don't know, whenever we get it done. What about PHA? Oh yeah, we do PHA every year. I said, oh, that's nice. Every year? You don't do PHA every 5 years? No, that's a long time for us. We are so environmental friendly that we do PHA every year. I said, no, you're not required to do that every year. It's every 5 years. Oh, that's even better. And I said, okay, what else do you know about CalARP program? Not a whole lot. I'm just learning. I joined the industry about a year ago, And I said, you are the one responsible. Do you understand what difficulty and what responsibility comes with when you sign this certification? He goes, nope. I said, okay, you better think it twice. And the next day I get a phone call is, hey, Alvin, I'm removing myself from the CalARP overall responsibility, and our plant manager is now the new overall person responsibility. So make sure, guys, regulators, when you go and look at all this, ask questions. And that's what I do. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Review your plan prior to going out and doing inspections. And what has worked for me is when I review the plans, I write down things. Baronia taught me is to read the CalARP plan page by page, word by word, line by line. And 8 years ago, or 9 years ago in 2010, when she told me this, I was like, no, I didn't even read the whole book in college. Why do I have to do this for the CalARP program? And it made sense. Because when I read, I write down the things that's important. And I ask those questions during the audit. And I also want to let the facilities know, look, I'm here to educate you guys on the regulations. And let me help you be in compliance, because when the feds and the OSHA people come, they're the ones that they're going to dig into the pockets, not me. I'm your resource. I'm your educator. So you guys help me understand your system, how it operates and how it works, and I'll tell you how the regulations work. Let's create an effective partnership. That's what I do. And that's how I've gained my knowledge in ammonia refrigeration, is I ask questions. Help me understand how this system works. How does your compressor work? How does your evaporators work? What does it do? That was my beginning when I first started going into refrigeration. And I was scared. I have a degree in biology. I have no knowledge about engineering. So I was scared, sitting in a conference room with mechanical engineers and chemical engineers, people that design ammonia refrigeration, plant managers and maintenance guys. They all look very scary to me. But you know what I had? I had the most powerful tool with me, Title 19. And I used it towards my advantage. And I made sure that, hey, let me help you, and you guys help me understand the system. And today, yeah, I can answer some difficult questions about ammonia refrigeration. Yeah, trust me, I can. Test me, not now, afterwards, okay? So hazard assessment, again, that's another component. Talks about offsite consequences analysis, worst case scenario, alternate case scenario, depending on what the process is. Emergency response program. So under the emergency response, 2765.1 is the applicability. If that applies to you, if you have an EAP or ERP, what does EAP stands for? Emergency Action Plan or Emergency Response Plan. So 2765.2 is all about emergency response program. Facilities that will respond to a release. An emergency action plan talks about a facility that will not respond to a release, but they have procedures in place on how and who they will call to mitigate a situation or release, okay? And then Program 2, Program 3 requirements. Program 2 falls under 2755.1, 2.7, 2760.1, 2.12. Those are the Program 3 requirements. And then updates. There are updates that needs to be done every 6 months or every 30 days. If there's not every 30 days, but if you have an emergency contact change, how many days you have? Yeah, I gave the answer, right? Okay. If you had a major modification and you had to increase your the program level, how many months you have to let the CUPA know? Within 6 months, yes. Not 6 months, but within 6 months. I'm very particular about dates. Also in the CDACs, EPA registration, if you said you did an PHA on so-and-so date and your expected completion time was within 6 months of your PHA, I'm going to hold you accountable for that. Even though PHA says in the 2015 regulations, you have 2.5 years to complete that. If you say you're going to do it in 6 months, you're accountable for 6 months. That's how strict I get. Dates are important, commitment is important, and documentation. Now you guys are saying, man, this guy was like easy, now he's getting difficult. I'm just here to protect the industries. Okay, management system. So do we have a CalARP management system present? Who is responsible, overall responsible for it? Qualified person, position assigned for the CalARP compliance. Make sure that that person understands, at least have a basic knowledge of the CalARP program or PSM and RMP, okay? You just cannot have anyone sign this document. Because if anything goes wrong, if a facility has a major release, guess who's going to be responsible for it? The person who signed it. Everyone's going to come after that person. So make sure that you as a regulator at any state or federal level, you communicate that clearly to the business that if you want to sign this, these are the responsibility that comes with. Also make sure that there's like an organizational chart. That you don't need to have names on the organizational chart, but who gives, as a regulator, you need to have a picture of who's responsible for what in this program. So, a VP, under the VP, it could be a plant manager, and then the plant manager could be the facilities engineer and the maintenance guys. So that could be a simple organizational chart that you can hold. But if you have names on it, regulation does not state that you need to have a name with each position. Just an organizational chart that you have an idea of who's responsible for what. Okay. So, registration information. That's 2740.1D of the California Code of Regulation, Title 19. Are all the items in that regulations identified? And I talked about that. What are those items for Program 2 and Program 3? Did the facility submit a copy to US EPA if you're a Program 3? And then that copy was provided to the local CUPA. And if you're a Program 2, a lot of counties and CUPA, they have their own registration form that they will give to the businesses, and you have to fill that out and submit back to the local CUPA. Okay? All right, executive summary. So like I said, there is six things that you need to know, and you need to have a brief description. The facility or the consultant who's preparing the RMP program needs to include all these things in the executive summary and give a brief description of these 6 components. Okay, accidental release prevention program, the emergency response policy, stationary source information, what is the regulated substance handle. In my case, most of the time is anhydrous ammonia. In other counties, it could be something else like any plating facilities that may have cyanide, or I don't know, Marco, what other things you guys see in Orange County that could be a regulated facility apart from anhydrous ammonia?
Yeah, your plating shop chemicals, your cyanides and cadmium oxides. We also have some facilities that have TDI, toluene diisocyanate.
Okay.
Chlorine as well.
Yeah.
Larger water treatment facilities.
Okay, yeah, so I have two facilities that are chlorine, and I forgot to mention that earlier, but one of those water treatment facilities is going away from chlorine and going with ozone treatment, and I have only one facility that's now treating their wastewater with chlorine, and the other facility that's kind of out of ordinary is a sulfur dioxide facility. They are in distribution of SO2s, mostly to wineries. And we have 2 big, well-known wineries in my county. Okay, Stanislaus County is pretty well known for ammonia refrigeration companies and wineries. So, yeah, feel free. I'll take you guys to the tour of the wineries and get you some free samples if you want. My favorite wine? I'm being recorded, so, but my wine is red blend, and it should be bourbon aged wine. Yes. And I'm pretty good about it. Did I had some? No. Last night? No. Tonight? Maybe. We'll see. Okay. You guys are very, very good audience. No questions so far. So I'm glad that you guys are understanding what I'm saying. You guys are taking notes. I can see that. But ask me questions, okay? I like to be. Yes, sir.
So if you look at, you evaluate the facility and you see that, you fall under the CalARP 2
Mm-hmm.
program. Now, can a county make their own recommendation? Can a county actually move you up, take you up to the next tier if they feel that their opinion can be?
Yes, very good question. So the question was, if you are a Program 2 facility, and can the county put you in a Program 3? Yes, we can. Based on how close you are to the next threshold level, based on your offsite consequences analysis and your public receptors or your sensitive receptors, based on where the location is. If you are a Program 2 facility and you have close to 9,900 pounds of anhydrous ammonia, and you are in the heart of downtown, I'm from Modesto, downtown Modesto, okay, and you're at 9,900 pounds, your offsite consequences analysis can travel 2 miles, which will cover all of downtown Modesto and some residential areas. People that will be affected is over 2,000 or 3,000. Yes, we can put you in a higher risk category. So, good question.
I have a question.
Yes.
Back to your point about qualified person certification.
Yeah.
Are you looking for like a corporate delegation of authority, or is that something you're just feeling out when you go and do a facility inspection? You're talking to the knowledgeable person.
When I'm talking to the knowledgeable, I don't dictate who should be signing it. It could be a corporate delegation. It could be someone that from the corporate office delegates it. But my job is to ask questions to the person who is signing it. Do they have at least those basic core knowledge of the CalARP program? Do they know why they're signing this? Did they read the CalARP program, or the consultant sat down with the knowledgeable person who's signing it and explained to them what are they submitting to the company? Did the consultants review the prevention programs? Did they go over the whole RMP, CalARP, or PSM program with a knowledgeable person? Does the knowledgeable person know if there's a release, which agencies they need to call? So just a basic knowledge that I would look for. Does he understand about compliance audit? Does he understand about process hazard analysis? Does he know how much ammonia or other regulated chemical that he has or she has? That's why they are in the program. So you just need to ask questions. Yes, ma'am.
Do you require as a CUPA that the owner-operator certification, that individual who signed it, be present if they're the RMP or PSM administrator, to be present during the inspection?
Most of my inspections, they are present. Yes. Do I require them? I have not come across where that person was not present during my inspection, so it depends. It could be, it could be not. But I would prefer that the person signing it be present. It's not, I don't think it's a good thing if you're in California and it's a corporate industry and someone from New York is signing the RMP program. And I know that I've got about 5 or 6 facilities, they are corporate facilities, and they're submitting documents which everything says 1910 or 5189, and the person signing the document that they're knowledgeable is sitting in New York. And I'm here, I'm regulating everything that's in Title 19, 2735 to 2780 regulations. So how can I ask those questions? I may ask them to put them on a conference call, and I can ask the questions if I need to, but it all depends on the CUPA, what they want to do. I prefer that person be there at least to have me answer those basic questions I need to know. Does that answer your question? Okay, good. Any more questions? Okay. So, oh, yeah.
You ever dig deeper into the management system, or just, are you satisfied with just a flow chart?
If it's not defined well, if the management system defines what the company structure is, I'm good with it. But if they're saying they have a VP and a plan manager and a system engineer, and it's different from what they're telling me, then I will ask questions. That's why it's good when you, as regulators, to review your plan and look at each component of the CalARP, and you go and ask them, is this management system the same as you reported in your CalARP program? Has that changed? Good? Yeah. So hazard assessment, or sometimes we refer as HA, talks about offsite consequences analysis. Worst case scenario, if something happens, how much will it be released? How many pounds per 15 minutes or 10 minutes? And how many people will be affected? What will be the population affected? That's what it talks about in the worst case scenario and the alternate case scenario. The worst case scenario could be your largest vessel in your system and whatever it can give off in 10 minutes. Okay. Alternate release scenario would be anything in your piping or other small vessels. Defining offsite impacts to the population. Again, when you draw the plume model will tell you who's affected and how many people are affected. If you have sensitive receptors like schools and parks, then the environment can be affected as well. And the 5-year accident history. There's a couple lines that will be under the 5-year accident history that the facility had no accident history. That's it. That's pretty much I see most of the time under the hazard assessment. They have no accident. Okay, emergency response. Applicability, like I said, 2765.1 is the applicability. And here I will look for is the facility going to respond to a release, or they're going to call an outside hazardous material response team. So if you have an EAP plan, that would be a non-responding facility. If you have an ERP, emergency response plan, that means the facility is responding to a release. They're trying to mitigate. They have a respiratory protection program. They have a full face mask or respirator mask. They will go into a situation, either they will monitor the PPM, 100, 200, or 300, whatever it is. So as far as the emergency action plan, the owner, operator, and the employees, as we know, will not respond to a release. They need to coordinate with the community plan. The response plan will be in the community plan or the area plan for the county. Okay, it's kind of like relating with the business plan as well. It goes hand in hand. And the response actions have been coordinated with the local fire agency. That is one of the most common findings that I find in my inspections, that the facilities will have an emergency action plan, but the 2017 regulation states that the emergency actions need to be, or the response actions need to be communicated or conducted or coordinated with the local fire department or the local hazmat response team. So if you ask that question, was your EAP evaluated or the response action was coordinated with the fire department, they will say yes. And please don't stop there. Ask them, okay, what documentation do you have that you coordinated that? So that's what I ask for, is documentation. How can you prove that you took your EAP plan and invited the fire department or the local response agencies to your facility, and you showed them around what you have, and if anything happens, this is where you need to go and push your button for to close the solenoid valve or the king valve, and kind of show them the facility. So it needs to be documented. How you document that, it's going to be up to the facility. The regulation only states that the response actions needs to be communicated or coordinated. That's what the regulation states in 2765.1. Okay? What else? Let's see. Response program, full-on response program. It's very critical. And when I look at the plans and when I inspect, I like to have the plans be site-specific. What you do and what you say, I will hold you guys accountable for that. So consultants, if you are preparing a plan for a business, you make sure that you are not taking a boilerplate and you're just applying their facility information. When I first started doing this CalARP inspection, I was coming across a lot of those boilerplate where they changed the names and put the facility's name. And how I kind of figured that out was the phone numbers for the hospitals would be in the Bay Area or the Southern California. And I would know, oh, this consultant does business all over California, and they took the name of Modesto company and they prepared an RMP plan. And they would give me information about railroad cards and how they would transport the regulated substance to a facility under. And I said, no, they don't. They have anhydrous ammonia. Why would they need a railroad or rail car information? So regulators, please, when you are reviewing the plan, pay a lot of attention to what the consultants are submitting. Make sure that the plan is site-specific, and you review them, and when you go to the facility, have it what they say, make sure they do it. That's what I do. I like to be site-specific. That's one of my pet peeves. You can submit me a binder, a 3-inch ring binder of a Program 3 facility, and a Program 2 facility will also send me a 3-ring binder, but I only need half the information. Why? Why are you paying your consultants a whole bunch of money when you don't need all those information? And that's where the qualified person who's signing it comes handy. He becomes an important person. Is what are you putting together in my RMP plan? Is this information what pertains to my facility, or is it not? Okay, so the response plan, it needs to be very detailed. And I know there's a hot topic going on with OSHA, CalOSHA, about the 5 or the 10-minute escape bottle, right? Have you guys heard about that? Okay, so if you want more information on that, I can provide that, but you need to, that's a very long conversation. And CalOSHA is right now, as we speak, they may be out there citing facilities. They don't have a 10-minute escape bottles. And you need to put their language under PSM 5189 language in your emergency response program. It needs to be there. So if you want more information on that, I have it. We can talk about it later on. OSHA will be citing 5149, the Respiratory Protection Program, 5189, the 5189.D, I think that's the Emergency Response Program, and they will cite 3220, which is the business plan, emergency action plan for CalOSHA. So these are the 3 citations that will cite a business if CalOSHA's language is not in your ERP plan. Okay, so emergency response program needs to be very detailed. You need to follow all those requirements that's in 2765.2. Training is important. Reviewing your incident emergency response plan is important. 8-hour refresher training, 40-hour HAZWOPER training, these are all components of the emergency response plan. Make sure you guys are doing it. Now we get to the meat of it, the prevention programs, okay? Like I said, 7 programs in program 2, 12 in program 3, and the emergency response program makes it 13 for program 3. And that's what I look for. I used to do inspections in 1 day 5 years ago. Now it takes me 2 days. Even program 2 facilities takes me 2 days. I get very, very detailed about the prevention programs, very detailed. So I have my regulations open, and I look at the prevention program, and I ask questions. Is this what you do? Yes, we do. Okay, show me documentation. How you do it? Do you have documentation? If you say you're going to be conducting your ammonia census every 6 months, you have detailed that out in your RMP plan, I will need to see documentation on that. Where's your calibration records? Show me that 6 months for the last 3 years. So I'm going to talk about program 3 prevention programs, those 12 prevention programs, 2760.1, 2.12. And because I'm not going to talk about program 2, program 3 is, if you know program 3 prevention programs, you will automatically know program 2 prevention programs. They're very similar. Some of the words are different. Like in program 3, they will say process safety information. Program 2 just says safety information. Program 3 says process hazard analysis. Program 2 says hazard analysis. In Stanislaus County, we kind of do a program 2/3 inspection. So most of my facilities are big corporate facilities, and they have some of the program 3 prevention programs already in their company, like hot works permit, contractor safety, management of change, pre-startup safety reviews. These are already some of the PSM programs on RMP, so they have a written program for that. So when I'm doing a program 2 inspection, I do them a favor by looking at their prevention programs and kind of give my suggestions and how they can be still in compliance with Part 68 and 5189 regulations. That's what I do. I try to help my businesses out. Yes, sir.
Yeah, but I found it easier where CalARP 2 is where I'm at. And I found it easier just to do the CalARP 2 the extra requirement of 3 weeks. I just found it as the best practice for both of us.
Yeah, and that's a good idea. So, there's nothing out there that states if you are a program 2 facility, then you should not be taking a program 3, but feel free. If you have the budget, if you have the money, you have the manpower to manage all those 12 programs as a program 2, then do it. Yes, sir.
When conducting an inspection on this type of facility, they have their program 2, but they have program 3 in their RMP. And when you find issues with their program 3 items, you just go ahead and make those recommendations for correction?
That's the key word you said, recommendations, yes. Because if you look at, now everything is electronic because of CERS, Environmental Electronic Reporting System, and it does not put you like what I did 5-6 years ago in my checklist where it says program 2/3, where I had all the programs together. But now it's either program 2 or program 3. So when I'm reviewing program 3 for a program 2 facility, I make my recommendations. Because I know they're either going to be under the PSM, maybe, but I do. Because if they are not under the PSM program or RMP, but they have those prevention programs because of the corporate office corporate office wants to, and they have other facilities in other states that may be under the PSM RMP program, and the corporate office puts together a program for all their facilities throughout the United States, that's where the recommendation does come in handy. I do make my recommendation that here's what the regulation states, and this is what you don't have, so go ahead and do this. Do I write that down? I would probably, under additional comments, and I would make my suggestion that this facility has additional programs that fall under the program 3, and here's my recommendations. Do I assign any violation, class 1 or class 2 or minor? No. It's just a recommendation. Do I protect myself with that? Yes. The facility comes back and says, Alvin, you screwed me up. You were here and OSHA came in and cited us, but you did not tell me that this was wrong. I said, no, I did. Look at my inspection report. I did make those recommendations for you. So when I do, I mean, my whole mode changes. I become a Hulk. Okay. This is what I love. I love hazardous waste, TIA permitting, and CalARP. I dream about it. Last night I was babbling in my room. And the next door was like, why are you saying about process safety analysis? It's like, nah, I'm just kidding. But anyway, yeah, I do dream about my inspections. The next day I have to go. I prepare mentally. Was I preparing about this class? No, I wasn't, because I know it was going to be a piece of cake for me. All right, so some of these prevention programs are 3, going into pre-startup safety review, compliance audit, and incident investigation. Now, incident investigation, compliance audit, mechanical integrity or the maintenance program, training, operating procedures, hazard analysis, and safety information, those are program 2, 27, 55.1.2.7, okay? The rest are program 3. Okay, so what I look for in process safety information, your PNIDs, are they updated? Are they current? If you made a major modification and you wrote an MOC, I will ask you a copy for that management of change. I will see what you did, what changes you did in your process that constitute a management of change, and I will make sure that anything that was changed in your process, did it affect the PNID? If you put in a new high pressure receiver and a bigger volume, I will make sure that it's either, was it updated in the PNID or not? The valve tags, if your valve tags got changed, did it reflect on the PNID? When was the last time the PNID was updated? Some of the PNIDs, or do you know what PNID stands for? Yes. And this is Justin Stoker. He's from Bronco Winery in Stanislaus County, so you know where to go to get your free wine, guys. Okay, yeah, so PNID, piping and instrument diagram. Very, very important, okay? That pretty much tells me how your system is, what your system is, how the diagram flows. Do I take the PNID with me when I'm doing the ammonia refrigeration inspection out on the process? Yes, I do. When I'm in the inspection mode, in the conference room, I open the PNID and I write down the valve numbers, the critical valve numbers, and I write it down, and when I'm on the floor, I make sure the valve tags match what the PNIDs are. And that's how I can tell if they are current or not. If your PNID says you have 5,000 pounds of anhydrous ammonia and you did a management of change and you increased your ammonia load and now it's 7,000, was your PNID changed? Was your registration changed? If you put in a new high pressure receiver, was your SOPs changed? Employee training, all these things needs to be done. If you increased your ammonia content, was your intended ammonia inventory, was it calculated? Was it changed? Is it current or not? There's a lot that goes with it. So you have to remember a lot of things when you're doing ammonia refrigeration or RMP inspection. It will come natural to you guys. Now I just remember things. 5 years ago, I used to have sticky notes, notepads. I used to have information written down. Now I just remember what they are and what it is. And people are like, how do you remember all this information? I take ginkgo to increase my knowledge, and you can drink bourbon to increase your knowledge too if you want to. Okay, so process safety information, detectors, sensors calibrated according to the risk management plan. If you say you are going to calibrate your ammonia sensors every 6 months, you better do it. If you don't, Alvin will give you a finding, okay? That's very important. Or you can say my sensors are calibrated according to the manufacturer's recommendation, which is pretty much once a year. But if you want to do up and beyond and you want to calibrate twice a year, then do it. You want to do it in-house, fine, but you got to have a trained employee. And I'm going to ask them, how are they trained? Where did they go train to be an in-house calibration for your ammonia sensors? Do you see how detailed it can get? Materials of construction, U1A forms, I looked at also. Your dimensions, your high pressure receiver, the calculations, is what you have on the floor in your system is what is represented in the UA1 documents. Operating limits, safe and upper lower operating limits. Your daily logs, when you are looking at your daily logs for the ammonia refrigeration, sometimes they put the range. And I swear by those things. If you are putting those range, and it should match your process safety information range. And also it may be in the operating procedures as well. And if you're not, then it tells me you're not reviewing your documents, you're not reviewing your operating procedures. Employees are not trained the proper way. They do not know what the operating limits are. They're just taking the log sheets and writing the numbers down. So are they educated? So all these things, one little thing can constitute a lot of questions from me. Training, SOP review, and do they understand the system? Why they are taking those logs? How much knowledge they have? So interviewing the employees is also important. And one thing also discussed here is consequences of deviation. Now, consequences of deviation is also discussed in the operating procedures. And sometimes the consultants will say, well, yeah, refer to the process safety information. Well, no. If the components, whatever the regulation states for in the operating procedures, it needs to be there. You cannot refer back and forth. Because why? Your operating procedures needs to be evaluated as necessary and certified annually. It needs to be available to the employees. PHA or PSI information is available when we are doing PHAs. It may not be available all the time. So you cannot just say, oh yeah, consequences of deviation refer to either my PHA or my training, my SOPs. I'm very particular about like what the regulation states and what you have. You cannot deviate from that. So, and I sometimes reject the plans because the plans are not meeting what the regulation states. And they say, Alvin, you're very harsh. No, I'm not harsh. I'm trying to help you. I'm an educator. I educate about regulations. Okay. Are you doing good on time? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to speed up here a little bit. So PHA 2760.2, you need to have a PHA every 5 years. You can revalidate the last PHA, but then the 10th year, you need to do a full-scale PHA, okay? And again, a knowledgeable person needs to conduct a PHA, and the recommendations needs to be completed 2.5 years. And anything before 2015 could be on a timely manner, but anything after 2015, January 1st, your PHA recommendations needs to be completed in 2.5 years. SOPs, standard operating procedure. Again, consequences of deviation is discussed here in operating procedures. It's also discussed in the process PSI, process safety information. And also, it can be discussed in a process hazard analysis as well. So each one of them can have its different way of looking at it, but it needs to be stated in that prevention program. You cannot say refer to that. So these are all the steps that are in your SOP. So when I look for standard operating procedures, I take a standard operating procedures and I have my regulations open and I look if the SOPs match what the regulation states. And if it's not, I ask questions why you don't have health and safety consideration discussed, or why don't you discuss about deviations and steps to correct the deviation. And they say, well, the consultant wrote it. Oh, I thought we have it. But why are you asking this, Alvin? Well, I'm asking because that's what the regulation says. Oh, okay, so do we need to write it? Yes, you need to write that. You need to discuss that. And I explained them, like, what I'm asking you is not what I like. I ask you because that's what the regulation states. This is what it states, and you have to do it. Okay, important. SOPs needs to be reviewed as necessary and certified annually, okay? Most people don't do that. So as regulators, you need to make sure that you need to see documentation that it's certified annually and how it was certified and who certified it. I see certifications of SOPs done in 1 year. They have about 20 SOPs, and in 1 day they reviewed all SOPs. And those SOPs were written in 2013, and I'm reviewing the SOPs in 2019. Was it certified annually? Not. There were some SOPs that were old, system changed, but no one reviewed the SOP as necessary. So these are the things that I explain to them, is what each word means and how it applies to you, and what you did that constituted me to get a finding. Okay, employee training is another thing. You need to show me proof of your initial training of your employees. Not every employee in your plant or in a business, but all employees that will be directly affected with the process that you're handling or the stationary source that you have in your plant. So everyone at a minimum who is a system engineer or maintenance guys needs to go through initial training and refresher training. As a plant, they need to be aware of the regulated substance they have. So an annual education on, let's say, anhydrous ammonia, evacuation, emergency action plan, they need to show me all those. But for technicians and maintenance guys, when you hire someone, you need to show me proof of your initial training. Show me documentation of what they were trained for. Not just on company policies, but I need to know their basic understanding of ammonia refrigeration. Do they understand the operations? Do they know what it means? Why are they taking the daily logs? How did they get trained? Who trained them? What were the initial training? And then refresher training every 3 years minimum. So you can ask your consultants to provide that training. You can ask, sometimes Stanislaus County hold workshops. You guys can attend that. But what were the refresher training? If your technicians are RETA certified, then you can use that. But these are the things that I look for is the initial training and refresher training. It needs to be documented. And how? Not just saying, yes, we did that. How you did that, and where's the proof for it? Yes, sir. What was that again?
How soon after an operating procedure changes is training required?
You need the mic, maybe?
Yeah, no, I think I got the answer, but his question was, how soon do you need the SOPs changed, right?
Yes.
When there's a change in system?
Yes, if there's a change in the process or the operating procedure changes, how soon is training required for those employees affected by that
Okay,
procedure
so
change?
now that becomes a question, was it a major change or in like kind change? So if it was a major change, you need to do management of change, right? And management of change requires all these things to be done prior to pre-startup safety review. So it needs to be done and signed off and trained before you sign off the management of change. So whatever the length of the management of change is or the process, people need to be trained. You cannot do a major modification and change something and implement a new SOP and not have a training for the next 5 years. It needs to be done. Yes?
I think as soon as they start using that SOP, they need to provide training before they use any updated SOP. It doesn't matter because they're gonna have to use those steps in their process, so we need to make sure that they're trained.
Yeah. And in the management of change, SOPs and training is one of the components that the person needs to sign off. Okay, so mechanical integrity, this is one of the backbones of the prevention program. The facility needs to have a good, strong maintenance program. If you don't maintain your system, you are bound to have a release. If you don't maintain your system integrity, you don't do your the work orders, you don't check your systems on a daily basis, you don't do the bulletin 110 schedule of inspections, you don't maintain your system, your systems will fall apart and you'll have releases. So you got to have a written procedure on how you maintain your system. Who maintains it? Is it done in-house, or you have an outside contractor coming in and maintaining your system? And if you have outside contractor coming in, you need to show me your schedule of maintenance. Who's doing what? And then if you say you do certain things on a 6-month basis, I need to see proof. Where's your work order? If it's an outside contractor doing it, have the contractor provide you documentation that they did that. Preventions, pressure relief valves. Pressure relief valves needs to be changed every 5 years. Well, do you have a schedule for that? Was it changed? How can you show me? How can you document? How can you prove that you changed it? When I'm out on the floor looking at the pressure relief valves, I look at the tags. Was it punched? The date of installation and the date of that it's going to be changed. And again, we just talked about management of change and training and how SOPs needs to be written, and if it's done and before it's signed off, the training needs to happen on the SOPs, and employees needs to know what the new SOP is. So, as necessary and certified annually. That's what the regulation states. Okay. So management of change and pre-startup safety review kind of go hand in hand together. Okay, compliance audit. It's another important thing. Some people do compliance audit in-house, but then I ask, are you knowledgeable enough to do a compliance audit? Do you know all the prevention programs? Can you truly tell me that you went through all the regulations? Do you understand your Title 19 regulations? Do you understand the compliance audit? Do you know when the recommendations needs to be completed? And if they don't, then they are not knowledgeable enough to conduct a compliance audit. These are my initial questions. My first question is, okay, when do you think your recommendations needs to be completed? When you have a compliance audit, and how often you need to do compliance audit? That's my gauge to tell me that the person knows how to conduct a compliance audit or not. If they not give me every 3 years and the recommendations needs to be completed 1.5 years from the time they've come up with the recommendations, I know there's something wrong. And I look at the list of recommendations, and I need to see when was it assigned, who completed it, and when it was completed. And I need to see proof of those. So you cannot just go in and create a spreadsheet and put in names assigned and say it was done, or it's ongoing. There's nothing like ongoing anymore. It needs to have a date and a person assigned to it and responsible. Needs to have been done in 1.5 years. Otherwise, it's a finding. Incident investigation, if you have an incident, whether recordable or non-reportable, whether it went offsite or went offsite, it's a minor release or major release, incident investigation needs to have been conducted. You need to show me when the incident happened and when the incident investigation started. I was out with an EPA inspector, and he was very particular about these two things, these dates. So some of the things that I find and I learned was from OSHA inspectors and EPA inspectors as well. Okay, so again, 2760.9, read the regulations. These are some of the things that it wants. It needs to have a date of incident, when it happened, when the investigation began. It could have been the same date, or it could be the same date, but the hours could be a little bit off. Incident happened at 6 a.m., investigation started at 7 a.m., but it needs to have the date. Okay, detailed description of the incident. You cannot just tell me, oh, the PRV valve lifted and that was it, and we replaced the valve. What does that tell me? Nothing. I need to know where it happened, when it happened, why the PRV valve lifted, when was the last time it got replaced. Give me all the details. Detail, and documentation. Okay? Employee participation, that's a prevention program 3 only. So at a minimum, if you're conducting compliance audit, process hazard analysis, involve your people, involve your maintenance folks in there because they are knowledgeable about the system. You cannot just have the VP and the plant manager do a PHA with the consultant. Are they knowledgeable? Maybe, maybe not. So employee participation is very important. Hot work permit and prevention program. So if you're doing any hot work, welding, cutting, brazing, around or with the process, you need to have a hot work permit. Now, hot work permit, it depends on the company policy. They can retain the hot work permit for 5 years or 3 years, but the regulation states completion of work. Title 19 only says you need to keep the permit on file until completion of work. But company policy may differ. Yes, Barania?
I was just going to say, but OSHA for the hot work permit is 6 months. So the hot work permit for OSHA is 6 months. So our organization, we keep hot work permits 6 months.
So is that
Out of
okay?
the process
Is
safety
that
management.
OSHA regs, Fed OSHA or CalOSHA? Is
CalOSHA.
it 1910 or 5189?
1910.
1910. So Fed OSHA.
So out of PSM states that until the work is completed. 1910 for hot work permit is 6 months.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, best management practice, BMPs, right? Okay. Contractor safety, again, you have contractor coming out in your facility and they are conducting any work. For example, Apex or APCO or cold storage technologies coming out. They are the contractors working on your process. You need to go through all this contractor safety information, make sure they understand what they're dealing with. You need to know if they're safe to come into your facility and they're knowledgeable, they are trained. You need to review their training program, give your training policies to them, emergency action plan or response plan, share information, and as an owner-operator, you need to evaluate them again on their safety programs as well, okay? All right, so updates here. We talked about some updates. Within 5 years of initial submission, you need to update your RMP plan. Every 3 years, if the EPA lists a new regulated substance. So if EPA comes up with a new list of chemical in their table 1, then you have 3 years to update your plan. On or before a date, a quantity of regulated substance exceeds a threshold. So if you are at program 2, you went to program 3, you need to do that. 30 days within a change of emergency contact. So let's say Justin was the emergency contact, he moved on, became a VP, and then sitting next to Justin is Tony, and she becomes the new PSM coordinator. We need to have the 30 days date of change submitted to the CUPA. And if they're program 3, it needs to go to the EPA as well. And 6 months of a reportable release. Hopefully there's none in my county, but if it is, you have 6 months to report that. And EPA is big on this again, guys, I'm telling you. Yes, ma'am.
What's the definition of reportable release?
Okay, it depends, okay? A reportable, if you have anhydrous ammonia, if it goes over 100 pounds, that's a reportable. That's required to report. That's a reportable quantity for anhydrous ammonia is 100 pounds.
In regards to that 5-year accident history, within 6 months of reportable
Yes. Yeah. Oh. For anhydrous ammonia, yes. I don't know about other substances. The reportable, no, I'm referring to what is the reportable, not the RQ of the threshold to be in the CalARP program, but the reportable quantity to report to the agencies, to NRC or
OES.
National Response Center or CalOES.
So it all depends on everything, but I would just caution, just me coming from a private industry, that no matter if you only have, or you calculate a small percentage, I know for our county, it's a good practice just to let our regular county know, even if it's not the 100-pound threshold, we still want to let them know we had an incident, how we resolved it. I just think that's good practice.
Yeah,
I think
and
counties want to know.
we require that too. If you have any reportable, and any release, you report to the local CUPA. But the reportable is the 100 pounds, and that's per National Response Center. Yes?
To the National Response Center. California does not have a reportable quantity.
Yeah,
It's
that's why I'm
generally
saying
any.
It depends on the county requirement as well.
Well, I'm telling you what the state law says is any.
Okay. Yeah, and that's in the CalOES, the CalOES guidance.
Yes, exactly. So that 100-pound reportable is only to the National Response Center. To your local CUPA, you have to report any release. Unauthorized.
Yeah, so again, it depends on the local CUPA, like Dan has stated, that for national response, it's 100 pounds. That's the reportable quantity.
Alvin, and some of the considerations as well, or did you have to evacuate employees out of the plume area? Were there off-site consequences? Were there receptors off-site reporting, signs and symptoms from the release, regardless of the quantity? Those are all reporting triggers for OES.
Yeah, so let's see. Yeah, it goes again in the RMP updates as well. Yes, thank you for that.
I just want to clarify one thing. In California, like Dan mentioned, any amount you need to report it to CUPA, but it depends on if there's an imminent threat. We might investigate because there's an imminent threat, or there's changes, or there are evacuation that happened that impacted the neighboring business or residents. So it might not reach 100 pounds, but the CUPA have to investigate. It has the responsibility to follow up, and that's what we do for every release. When we ask the businesses to send us the report, we follow up with an inspection and make sure that the root cause of that incident is documented so it doesn't happen again. So it's a touchy subject, but we made it clear, and I'm not sure about other CUPA, but in Stanislaus County, we make them report any amount, and they have to follow up with a report to us. And we take it from there.
Is that for an uncontrolled release?
For any release.
It depends, and like I said, it depends where the release is coming from. It might be a controlled release, but still we need to know what was the root cause for that control, so we follow up if you are really maintaining your system or not. Sometimes you have a controlled release that happens all the time that tell us something that you're not maintaining your system according to the RECA gap.
So last week I had a business that reported a release, and their amount was 0.02 pounds. And it came up from a safety relief valve. And I asked them to send me their calculation, how they determined it was 0.02 pounds. And it's still open. I haven't closed out the case. So I need to be educated more on that. So I probably will visit the facility. But initially they reported and said, hey, we had a release, and we think it's not that much. The PRV valve lifted and it resetted. And we will let you know how many pounds it was released. The next day he called and goes 0.02 pounds. And I said, okay, sure. Send me the calculation. How? Yes, Bronya.
From my experience in the CalARP program, guys, for the industry who are in this room, if you're not sure that you're gonna reach the 100 pounds, but it is about 80, 90, please report your releases and to the NRC, because they check the EPA check those logs daily. And I had a business who failed to report their releases, which was way over 100 pounds immediately. They waited for 1 hour, and 24 hours, and they were cited big time. So businesses, please be aware of the 100 pounds. If you're not sure, just report it. And then you could go back and say it was over-reported, we don't have, and show them the calculation.
Okay. So I've got some few pictures. I'm going to go really quick. These are some of the things that I find out there that's wrong with the system. Here's the door, engine room door is lacking sign. Okay, there's no proper signage on the door on the engine room. It doesn't tell me what's in there, those NFP logos. Is the door self-closing or not? Is a panic bar or not on that? It doesn't tell me anything. You can see here, the piping, there's no pipe markings. I don't know if someone looks at it, no one can tell there's ammonia refrigeration engine room inside those buildings. There's no pipe markings. It doesn't tell me whether it's liquid or gas. Is it high pressure? Or it's low pressure? Is it high stage, low stage? There's nothing. Rust, corrosion. That tells me that they don't have a great maintenance program, mechanical integrity program. They don't have that. Because if they do, these pipes would be either insulated or they would have a rust corrosion protection program, and these pipes will be addressed. And if they are rusting, they're exposed to the air, you can have a release. Okay, valve tags. Like I said, valve tags are important. Critical valves. When I look at the PNID, I make sure that the valve tags match what's out there on the floor. If it doesn't match or the valve tags are missing, that constitutes a finding. The vessels, surge drums, suction accumulators, insulation, are they broken? They replace the insulations, rusts. All this constitutes for having a good maintenance program or not a good maintenance program. Same thing here. You can see that in this picture, they use duct tape to hold the pipings, the insulation. So when they did a process hazard analysis or 5-year mechanical integrity, was this covered? Did they find this? I look for those recommendations. I look for those findings in the MI audit. Was this addressed or not? Was this found in the compliance audit or not? Or in the PHA? Or when they did when they do the daily rounds, they do the Bulletin 110 schedule of maintenance. Was this addressed or not? And if it was addressed, where's the work order? And if the work order was signed off, they said they replaced the duct tape, but it's still existing. So what is it? Falsification of documentation? So there you go. So you have to be very, very diligent about following the program. You have to be very diligent about what they write in the program and what they say it's followed. Open your regulations and follow the regulations hand in hand. Ask questions. Ask them, help me understand your system and I'll help you understand the regulation. That's how you create a partnership with the businesses. So in summary, in program-wide, I'm not done after this. There's more, guys, okay? So don't be starting getting up. You must have, you can't deviate from making, you need to have your list of recommendations and findings from your PHA compliance audit and make sure that it's done. 2.5 years for PHA and 1.5 for compliance audit. Do your follow-ups. If you say you're going to do this, do it. Don't leave anything open. Close the loops and document. Document everything. And just not document by saying you did it, but show it to me, how it was done. Who did it? Who signed off on it? And was there any proof to go with that and validate that? So if, like I said, if any of these are missing, there's a deficiency or finding. Okay, So I'm just going to go a little bit more, about 10 more minutes or so, and talk about minor violations, Class 2 violations, and Class 1 violations. You want to stay, or you're free to leave if you want to. Oh, you want to, yeah. So the check-in code was already there. This gentleman will put in the check-out code. So, okay. So minor violations. What's a minor violation? So when we complete the audit, and in our checklist now, it's defaulted, or the CUPA can also change the default settings in our inspection checklist and change a minor violation or a Class 1 violation, a minor or Class 2 to a Class 1, or minor violation to a Class 2, and a Class 2 change into a Class 1 violation. And it all depends on the degree of the violation. Was it happening over and over again? The history of the violation that the facility has, and how grossly that violation was. And did they pay attention? Was it knowingly, or did they just forget about it? So all these things constitutes. So a minor violation does not result in injury of person or property. Okay, it does not pose a significant threat to the environment. It's not knowing or willful or intentional. Something they just forgot a little bit. If they're saying, hey, I certified my SOPs, they signed it, but they forgot to put the date. So that's just a minor violation. It does not result in an emergency response. So there was a release, and the outside agencies did not respond. So that's a minor violation. It does not allow the violator to benefit economically. A Class 1 violation is willful, intentional, it's negligent, it's knowing. You should have done that, but you didn't do it. You should have done the compliance audit every 3 years, you didn't do it. You should have done the PHA every 5 years, you didn't do it. Your release posed a significant threat to the environment or to the public. You falsified the documentation. You were a chronic violator. You just neglected the recommendations and the violations that the CUPA cited 3 years ago. You just kept ignoring it. Class 2 violation is everything that's not a minor, or it's not a Class 1. And everything in between is a Class 2 violation. So classifying violations, how a CUPA, or how I classify violations. I have to look at the number of violations. If you're a grossly violator and you've got 20, 30 violations or findings, most of your violations will escalate to a Class 2. The hazard of the violation, how big was it? Did it impact the people, the business, the environment? The proximity, how far did it travel if there was a release? And the history of the facility. If they are not compliant, if the facility is not a compliant facility, they just ignore the CUPAs or the state or the federal, they could escalate into enforcement actions. So there's 3 basic ways to classify a violation. Is you have to confirm and eliminate a criteria for Class 1, and then a minor. And if it's not a Class 1 or minor, then obviously it defaults to a Class 2. And again, all these things that we talked about, the history of the facility and how many violations it has. So some of the minor violation examples, outdated SDS on file, need to have a most current one. Training documentations are missing dates, but they did the training. They have good documentations. They can show that this person came on site and did the training, but they actually don't have the dates were missing. They can show it in their system that these are the dates that were done, but the actual paper, the dates were missing. SOPs were missing some of the steps, like we discussed when we were going over the SOP requirements, consequences of deviation and steps to correct it. Those were not discussed, or health and safety considerations were not discussed. The daily logs were missing information. So, in 1 week, they probably missed to record the temperature and pressure of the compressors for 3 or 4 days, but consistent throughout the year, they were pretty much accurate on taking the daily logs, and the facility is in good standing, that would be a minor violation. Class 2 violations, these are some of the examples. They did not update the RMP, they submitted it late. They were required to submit every 5 years. They were late for a month, 2 months, or maybe 6 months. But they have a valid reason of why they did not submit. And if they just did not submit and went to 5 to 6 or 7 years, then it could escalate to a Class 1 violation. Employee training was not adequate. They did refresher training, but they were not able to provide initial training. Class 1 violation, that's the most difficult violation. Now, some counties take enforcement actions on Class 1, automatic enforcement actions. We try to work with the counties as much as we can, but these are some of the examples of a Class 1 violation. Okay, so enforcement, Article 2 of the Title 19, and Article 2 of Chapter 6.95 of the Health and Safety Code, that's in the statute. It's not a regulation, okay? Regulations are California Code of Regulations. Statute or the law is Health and Safety Code. And in 2540, it says that if you violate per day, we can charge you $2,000 per day or $5,000 effective January 1st, 2019. That $2,000 went to $5,000. But if you are violating a CalARP regulation knowingly, it could be $25,000. And again, it depends on the CUPA and how extensive and how intense their enforcement procedure is, which the Cal EPA requires each CUPA to develop a inspection and enforcement plan. And in their plan, it tells how they're going to take enforcement actions on facilities. So each CUPA is different. I cannot speak for each one of them. So I've got 5 more minutes, and I think I'm wrapping up here. Okay, so that's about enforcement. This is the most important slide of all. Questions? Yes, ma'am. I can. Yes, it will be posted online. Go ahead.
Hey there. I was a CUPA inspector, and I ran into this quite a bit, so I'm just wondering on, as far as coordination efforts, the law or the regulation does state in multiple instances that the owner-operator shall coordinate with the CUPA. And just to get your feedback on, the difficulties or the steps you took to reach that intent of the regulation.
For which, is it a prevention program? What are you talking,
So within CalARP, within the regulation, it states, for example, that the owner-operator shall coordinate with the CUPA to determine the level of detail of the risk management plan, or technical studies shall be coordinated with the CUPA, and
Yes.
the owner-operator is obliged to do that.
Okay, so technical studies, are you referring to PHA where they have?
PHA or hazard review, exactly.
Yes, so they have to. So when a facility calls me, or when a consultant calls me and says, we are inviting you to attend our PHA, I am asking, okay, what methodology are you using? And if they're saying HAZOP study, so I know HAZOP study is kind of a pretty intensive program. So it's probably directed towards difficult facilities that have complex in their system, so I would say yes. But if it's a small facility, it's a very easy facility and there's no complexity, then if they say I want to use a what-if checklist, I'm okay with that. So to answer your question, yes, I do need to have a dialogue with them. Yes.
Also, I want to elaborate a little more. We have the review process that's in the statute, and we have SOPs. I'm not sure about other CUPA, but we do heavily coordinate with the businesses. Even if it's enforcement action we're taking, we work with them to prioritize which fine or which correction they're going to have to address first. So coordination in our CUPA is big, Eileen. So because we wrote the SOPs to mimic the review process on how we're going to first coordinate with the businesses and work with them from step one. And in Stanislaus County, which I know a lot of CUPA do not request the full binder of the RMP that include all the elements of the program. I one time deviated from having those plans, but then we found it very hard for us to ask all the time for businesses to send us the documentation. So in our county, it was easier for us to request those documentation, and it has to be complete address. It might not be accurate, but at least it's addressed every element of the program. And we go from there when we do the formal evaluation and completeness review and all that stuff. So I think you have a question.
Could you elaborate on the process and procedural differences between a PHA revalidation and an update at the 5-year?
That's a very good question. And if you read the regulations, for Program 3, it says revalidation every 5 years. In Program 2, in the 2017 regulation, it says one revalidation, and then the next one has to have a full PHA. So that's something that I think the regulation missed. I would prefer that the Program 2 be revalidation every 5 years, and Program 3 have an update every 5 years and a full PHA every second round.
So let me answer that question. I know where you're heading. You want to see if we're going to require them to do what they did at the beginning when they conducted the PHA. It depends on the facility. Sometimes when we haven't seen any violation, still we require them to have the PNID in there, the qualified facilitator, all the group, and go through all the what-if checklists if they're using anything and address every single component of the system. There are some times we deviate a little bit. If it's a good facility, we know them, we inspected them, nothing have changed, so we're just gonna go through it faster than when they conducted the first time. So it depends. We rejected a lot of revalidation when I was an inspector because they were not running the whole PHA or HA as it's supposed to. So it depends on the history of the facility, but most of the time, we want them to conduct. As a regulator, really want to see a full PHA done, not just run through just pressure deviate, or if we have compressor is deviating from normal operation, what will happen? We want everything addressed. I'm not sure if we answered your question. It's not defined, it just says it needs to be revalidated. For us regulators, we need really to make sure that every single note that was discussed during the PHA is still the same. They didn't deviate it from the normal operation. And that could take a day, could take 2 days, could take half a day. It depends on the facilitator who's facilitating that PHA, or who's conducting that PHA.
Good question, thank you for it. And again, regulations are up for interpretation. I mean, you can say, I can revalidate my PHA every 5 years because nothing has changed, so it's still the same. But again, it needs to have a team put together and look at the whole thing again. And really determine that there was nothing changed, everything is still the same. All the safeguards were still in, that needed to be there are still there. But I guarantee, like, a facility is never the same every 5 years. Things change. Things change. So you need to look at the whole thing again.